because we're here to talk about funk and production, I think, and how everything got pushed forward to the 80s and 90s thing from traditional soul. And I was asking Damphon what he was thinking about. What was it? Parliament Funkadelic that was more influential, or was it Earth, Wind and Fire? So what would you say about that?
Um, I think that Earth, Wind, and Fire and P Funk are just in their own categories, and I think that they were considered in that era like more the positive band, and then P Funk was more on like the wild and party vibe. You
It
know
was
what I
kind
mean?
of like black rock, like the start of black rock in a way.
Start of it, yeah, yeah. And then they eventually went more, R&B and funk. You know what I'm
Like
saying?
late
But
'70s, like
yeah,
Parliament.
yeah. But with it, to answer your question, Earth, Wind, and Fire were great, and P Funk was great. It's unfortunate that people have to compare different things, but that was because they were just the biggest groups at that point in time. But I've heard a comparison. Weirdly, it's so interesting you bring this up because, from I'm from LA, so a lot of the musicians there know each other, but sometimes we don't really like get down with each other. Unlike the media that looks at it in a certain way.
Right.
So I've heard a comparison that people have compared the Earth, Wind, and Fire thing to P Funk situation, and they've mentioned Dame Funk and Flying Lotus.
Right.
So they consider Flying Lotus the Earth, Wind, and Fire. They consider Dame Funk the P Funk. You know what I'm saying? So it's very weird that you brought
Yeah,
this
it's
up
always have to
because
get the cliques going on,
yeah,
like so
and
to
it's not
put people
really like
against
an
each other.
enemy thing. It's not a nemesis thing. You know what I'm saying? It's just that's the way people categorize things.
Yeah.
So in this era, I've heard that comparison where Earth, Wind, and Fire versus P Funk and Flying Lotus versus Dame Funk. So it's very weird that you brought that up.
Yeah,
But it's
I
no
got it.
beef.
But it's funny because like, where was Earth, Wind and Fire based initially?
They're out of Earth, Wind, and Fire was out of Chicago,
Right. So it was.
but they eventually moved to L.A. Yeah.
Right, because it's. I always thought it was kind of a Midwest versus West Coast type of thing, because like a lot of people. What's something that's kind of funny to me is the Ohio sound, especially the Ohio and Detroit funk sound, got to be known right now as the G funk kind of the '90s sound, but it's actually from the Midwest.
Yes.
And Earth, Wind and Fire was more LA. Even the record sound more LA. The production techniques it was more a little bit more slick and everything. And yet people don't
Good point.
associate that with the West Coast thing, like with the West Coast funk thing. It's
Yeah.
kind of weird.
Well, a lot of the West Coast gravitated towards Midwest music in the United States. We're speaking when we say what Midwest, we're talking about the West, United States, and with that, I think that for some reason the West Coast listeners just had a natural connection with the Midwest, Dayton, Ohio, Detroit, Michigan, where P Funk and New Jersey and P. See, a lot of people don't realize that New Jersey and Detroit was the bridge of P Funk because some of the musicians came out of New Jersey
Right.
and then also Midwest Detroit. But the whole Dayton, Ohio funk scene is what really
Like Zapp, like Roger Troutman for us from there.
yeah. Roger Troutman, all those guys, they were just great. And so for some reason, as the East Coast, New York, and those cities, they gravitated more towards disco. And
Right.
when I was growing up, the West Coast gravitated more towards funk. So, but the East Coast had great groups like Cameo.
Exactly.
Yeah, they were funk. You know what I mean?
Like
So-
Fatback.
Yeah, exactly.
Fatback
So-
was West Coast.
Can
Clear
I,
and the
can I
West
drop
Coast.
a question?
Yeah, of course.
What was like the first time in your life you had the funk experience? Like this is a musical direction I want to move into, and talk us through how that happened. And you'll get the same question after.
problem.
For me, it was the 1999 album from Prince. When it came out, I was in grade school, and I was a latchkey kid, so my parents would be gone during like summertime, and I would have the house to myself, and I would ride my bike to the record store and get records, and sometimes I didn't feel like going outside to like play with the kids, so I would just listen to music all day long, and just open up the windows and I remember one time when I got the 1999 album, some girls are walking up the street, but I had the windows open in my living room, and I was blasting the 1999 album, and they stopped, and then they came up to the window, and that's the kind of magic that music can bring. You know what I mean? Just those natural experiences. So from that point on, I was into like right before the Prince album came out, I was into a lot of metal. So I was really listening to like Iron Maiden.
What a change!
Oh yeah. I was into Motorhead. I was into
Heavy
Kiss.
metal, right?
Yeah, a lot of heavy metal, and because the radio station in Los Angeles, it was called KMET, and they played a lot of metal and rock. And so I was in the Motley Crue. I went to a Kiss concert. The Motley Crue
Too
tour.
Fast for Love.
Say what?
When they put Too Fast for Love, like the first stuff.
That first album, and so I saw one of the first Motley Crue shows opening up for Kiss. But then that night when I was leaving, me and my dad were leaving the concert. While we were going to our parking lot, I saw a poster of who was coming up the next couple of weeks, and it was Prince, The Time, and Vanity Six, and I think they might have had Zapp and Roger on that bill.
Oh, that's strange.
But I was like, damn it, I wish I could go to that, because I was kind of struggling between heavy metal and funk. So eventually, to answer your question, 1999, when that album came out, that made me realize the world that Prince created, from the look, from the mixture of the band, ladies and gentlemen, and just the posters he had.
Yeah.
Everything. It influenced me
And
so
in a way,
much.
it was kind of a door of entry to you, because he had that rock element going on as well.
True.
It was like pure, straight up boogie right away. Like if you came as a metalhead or a heavy metal fan, like he was pretty rocking.
Yeah, he was rocking.
Like you could relate to it.
Yeah, he was great. That's my answer. It was the Prince 1999 album, the double album, that made me realize I'm gonna go into making music eventually. But that was around 82 and 83, so I didn't really start making my own music until around 88, 87 on cassette tapes. But from that point on, Prince and The Time and Vanity Six and all the other funk Kraftwerk, even with Tour de France and Egyptian Lover, all of that stuff was influencing me to go more into the funk side, and where metal kind of like took a back seat because it started changing into hair bands and Poison and that kind of stuff.
It
so
went
it wasn't
commercial.
Yeah, it went too
It went
commercial.
either super commercial or super underground.
Exactly.
And,
That's
and
my
Gary,
answer.
And Gary,
I just have one thing to say
Okay.
about when you played the album by the window. It reminds me of a thing Moody Man, Kenny Dixon Jr. said. Like he said that Prince saved his life with girls, basically, because he used to be super shy, and he would blast the 1999 album. That's an interview I read. That's funny, and he was just you know how Kenny is, like he's like always super laid back and everything. And he says, so I was too scared to talk to girls, so I would just play the 1999 album, and some girls would come by and say, hey, turn it up, and then I would say, no, you turn it up.
That's amazing. We have a
And
lot
he
in
said,
common.
I didn't have nothing to do. I just had to play the shit, and girls would drop by the car, and that's all you had to do. Blast Prince, get girls. Me personally, the funk thing, it's kind of I guess the moment I realized I really liked funk, I was like 5 or 6 years old, and it was completely random. Like I grew up in a family that was listening to a lot of jazz. My father is a hard bop and bebop head. Like we had tons of Blue Note records and everything. And there was a record, like it was CDs back then, and there was a compilation with various, like it was called Soul or something. So you had your artist writing, you had your Stax records, you had your Motown and everything. And I would listen to it like, as soon as I could use a CD player, And there was this one track that to me was like completely different from everything else. And I was a little bit too young to really get the whole soul thing. Like to me it was nice, but it was kind of weird because my father used to listen to hard bop, and it was a lot of energy going on in that music, that the whole John Coltrane type of thing. So when I listened to the Motown and Stax stuff, to me it was good, but it lacked that drive, And on that compilation, at the end of it, there was a couple of James Brown tunes, and it was like a very generic compilation. So it was like Cold Sweat and Sex Machine. And when Sex Machine was really the thing, it's not original, but it's really the thing that got me to realize that repetition could like really lock grooves like that. Like 7 minutes. And was like, yeah, that shit is happening.
So how did your jazz head of a father react to his son going in that direction?
Well, actually, looking back to his vinyl stash, because he had vinyl that he had, like it was the '90s, so vinyl was out of order. Like to people, it was like old stuff. You didn't have, it wasn't like nowadays where people are basically proud of the vinyl collection. So to my father, who is like he's 30 years older than me, vinyl was some old stuff. Like so he was in the attic. And I was hungry for records, so once I would get through all the CDs. He told me, "Oh, I had some old records and everything," and so he actually fixed his turntable back and everything. And he didn't have that much funk records, but he had some great R&B, like the Jarreau album by Al Jarreau, which is like Boogie Down is pretty much a pop funk classic. So he liked tunes. He never really knew about funk, but he liked tunes like the whole George Benson, Quincy Jones produced era. That was stuff he liked, so he didn't react at all like, oh, you're going funk. And the thing that really kicked in when I was 11 or 12 years old, and that's kind of a funny story, I remember that day very, very good. We was in vacation with my parents, and there was my sister and everything. And when you're doing like all that road, you just blast the radio and whatever radio it is, right? And there was this song that came out, and for years I didn't know what it was. It was like, right? But then there was rapping after it, and I was too young to understand. Like they didn't say. I was just like, when you listen to the radio and you never know, like when you got a good tune and the fucking DJ never says what it is. Like oh that tune was great and you never know what it was.
You just hit Shazam.
Sorry.
You just hit your Shazam app.
Right. Oh yeah. Like in '95 would have been hard.
Yeah.
But anyway, that tune was
times
like,
have changed.
it was the De La Soul tune, right? Say no more, say no go, and but that whole
No, me, myself, and I.
me myself.
De La
It's just
Soul,
me
yeah,
myself
yeah.
and I. Sorry, I confused the tune, and that was really a strong feeling in my head. And 5 or 6 years later, the whole peer-to-peer came out, like the whole Kaza type of thing, because you got to realize I don't come from LA, I come from the country, so there was nobody was listening to funk where I initially lived. Then I moved to the hood, but it was a different thing. And I found that I was like, I guess I like funk, so I download everything that's funk, and I stumbled upon Knee Deep. And I didn't know what it was going to be. And I was like, wow, here's that song from 7 years ago. And I only heard like 30 seconds of it off a sample. And that, yeah, I would say just James Brown, Sex Machine, and Knee Deep by Funkadelic. That's really the two tunes for me.
Well, now I think the word funk has been mentioned like a couple of hundred times
Never mentioned
already.
it enough.
What shouldn't we just listen to some funk? Just
What you want to say, man?
well, you choose.
Here it is.
So it should be going on. Yeah, that was a great song. It's actually yeah, give it up for Prince. It's actually a jam, a studio jam, I think. Like this is not an actually written, controlled song. It's the singer Morris Day, who was a friend of Prince, or who used to be, or something like that. And he's on drums, and they started jamming. And actually, the studio cut of that is called Chlorine Bacon Skin.
Yeah.
I think that's that. And it's like even crazy, and it's just Prince saying whatever bullshit he's got on his mind. It's some weird stuff. So this is like the semi-produced version. Anyway.
Yeah, that was another great song from Prince, and that's one of my favorite eras.
Yeah,
that
83,
82,
84.
83.
Yeah.
Right before 84. 84 was great, you know what I'm saying?
But it was a revolution going on.
Yeah,
But the end of the
exactly.
time was the best.
Yep. That whole 1980, 81.
Definitely
80,
agree on that.
I mean, really 78 into 83, you know what I'm saying? But 84 is still great and on up. But I really enjoyed a lot of Prince's output, and that was a great selection, man.
Yeah, no problem, man. So you was asking us if we play some instruments, right?
Yeah,
It's me asking the
we've
questions
been-
now.
That we can talk long time about instruments, and you actually put something down here. What is your? I would. Should we cut it down to two? What are your two favorite synths and drum machines?
Here you go first, man.
My favorite companies, I'll put it like that. I like Roland. I like Oberheim and Lynn. Of course, they made a lot of great instruments. For me, I just really like Roland instruments. I mean, it's what I've played on a lot of the material that I've released so far. And yeah, I mean, they have so many different instruments, you know. So Oberheim, Lynn, Roland, Korg, of course. I love a lot of their stuff.
If you had just like to take it down to two, like two pieces of gear, like you couldn't part without, couldn't part with.
I usually keep it a secret of what I use. Just
all right.
Okay, but
It's a
anyway,
secret
just
sauce,
kidding.
right?
Just
right.
kidding. No. I
Because
mean,
there's a video of you, I remember that's a dope one that you
kidding, I'm just
jamming with the DMX and
yeah,
thing.
you know, I mean, I don't
Or
like
DX.
it. Doesn't have to be. I remember Herbie Hancock on the back of his record. He listed every goddamn instrument.
Yeah.
He
Oh yeah,
used,
that
so,
was the
Mr.
Sex
Hands,
Sense one
cool.
or
you
something
know,
like
it's not tripping. I'm not tripping, but it's just that nowadays, I mean, you know, you have to guard your shit. I mean, it's too many people. I mean, it's rampant. So
You think so?
You know, but you know, like I said, I'll put it like this: I have a few people who really know my music. They'll know what I use.
Yeah, I dig.
For broadcasts right now, and what I'm planning on doing in the future, I just rather leave it at the brands I like. So
No
you know,
problem.
that's
You know,
so
that reminds me of
I'm
like
getting smart, y'all. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. It's time for me to get smart. Go ahead.
this whole thing with the secret sounds and everything. It brings me back two stories. Like there's one, a funny one. I don't know if you ever, someone ever heard like "Money for Nothing" by Dire Straits.
Yeah, it's a great
You know
song.
that tune, like there's this particular riff at the start of it, and actually that was Mark Knopfler trying to imitate Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top, and because Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top has a very special sound, and what happened is that Mark Knopfler actually called Billy Gibbons, and Billy Gibbons is from Texas, and he's a real like he got this whole cowboy persona, like this real mystique around him. And so he calls him up and he says, so what's your secret for that tone on that album? And he said, well, let me hear you find out. So that's what he said, told him on the phone. And 5 years later, Billy Gibbons actually got interviewed. The story continues, it's funny. And he get asked about a survey. He said, well, he didn't do a half bad job.
You know, it happens. You know what I'm saying? I remember one time I was doing a not intern, excuse me. I was being mentored by Leon Silvers III, and
Right.
He's the producer of a lot of like the groups like Shalimar and Dynasty.
And so his band and everything.
Yeah, Solar Records and
Actually did the Jacksons one, like the Destiny one.
I don't know if he did that one, but
The last one I think is him too. On
oh,
79, the Whispers shit, like 79. That's him.
Yeah. Leon is a great cat, really underrated producer. But we were up in Reno, and he had been hired to after the whole Milli Vanilli thing went down with the CD skipping at the award show. They had really took a dip, and really unfairly, because it wasn't their fault. You know, they were just going. That's what people don't really
music
talk
business,
about.
right?
You know what I'm saying? It's like it wasn't their fault. It was the people who were behind Milli Vanilli that just get your asses on stage. You know, do what you got to do, and then
They just was kids, you know. They didn't realize.
Exactly. So beyond that, in Reno, Nevada, Rob and Fab from Milli Vanilli had decided they wanted to finally make a real record.
Right.
So they were influenced by, a lot of cats don't know that those guys really knew the music. So they were influenced by like Scritti Politti and Leon Silver's like Shalimar stuff. So they hired Leon Silvers and members of the group Switch to come up to Reno, Nevada and reintroduce Rob and Fab from Milli Vanilli in a new configuration. So anyway, when I was up there, I was playing. Leon brought me up to you know, and we're along with Foster Silvers, and I was the young kid that Leon thought can, you know, get down with him. So when I was up there, he had I was in the studio playing, and this cat came in, like an older producer hanging around the studio, and I was pressing chords, and I never forget. He was like, and this is pertaining to what we were just talking about. he was like, "Oh man, what kind of chords are those?" And I was like, "Huh?" And I was like, because I'm just jamming in the studio with an SP 1200 in chords, and so he said, "Oh, can you please show me those chords?" And I was like, "Okay." And I showed him the chords, and then afterwards I felt raped. Like I was like, to lack of a better description, I was like, and I told Leon, I'm like a younger dude that like, Leon, the guy came in and he's like asked me what my
Took your
chords
knowledge or
were,
something.
man.
Right,
Like he
right.
asked me, what happened? He's like, man, damn, don't worry about it, man. It's like, it happens, man. But just know this: nobody's gonna ever be able to do what you do.
Yeah, that's why.
Somebody can try to do what you do, but nobody's gonna be what you do, what you do. So don't worry.
But
And
you
that's,
know, in a way, what you're saying is really my philosophy out of it, because Gary Gritness is a person of mine, and my main job is under a different name, and I'm basically a studio cat. And it's funny because you realize some stuff, like you have no idea how many records are just on the guitar is like a Fender Stratocaster into a Fender Twin. Like on 90% of records, you're gonna have that combination, and you can get so many sounds out of it. The best example about me, I always say there's no secrets about gear. That's just my belief. You know, as you say, to each his own. But I always say it's the cat doing the sound and not the sound making the cat sound good.
Right.
Like everybody knows Eddie Van Halen is using this type of guitar into this type of amp, and the craziest thing is he changed his guitars and amps all his career, and he still keeps the same sound. So to him it may be different, but it still sounds exactly like Eddie Van Halen. And in the jazz thing, tenor saxophone, I think since since the 1950s, 90%, every time you're going to see or hear a jazz saxophonist, a tenor saxophonist, he's going to play a Selmer Mach 6. That's the it thing. Like so many jazz, like from Michael Brecker to you know, I don't even know how many names to say, from Sonny Rollins to any, they all have all these different sounds out of the same horn. So you can't change the mouthpiece, but it's still the same horn.
True.
My preference when what I do as Gary Gritness, I got that from the studio, is to not go to the quirky stuff. When I was in the studio one day, I remember I was doing a drum session, and it was like kind of a British rock type of thing. And so I hear the track, and I was here to play drums, and I was like, all right, this needs like some Ludwig or Slingerland snare, because it's the snare the most important thing when you do that type of playing, the sound, get the sound right. And this dude had so many stuff, like he had all the custom drums and Orange County drums and Noble and Cooley and stuff that was
But
like
he
so
got-
pricey.
He didn't have the real shit.
Well, actually, I knew he had, because it was a proper studio. So, but the dude was so excited, like, oh, you should try this, and you should try that. So I, put the snare on. I'm like, yeah, whatever. And it's okay, but it's not sounding like 1,200 euros. And I'm like, all right. And time goes on. I'm like, I just want to get my money and get this session done. So I'm like,
I feel you.
you got a Ludwig, like a Superphonic or something? And he said, oh yeah, but everybody's using it. I'm saying, yeah, but there's a good reason. Like, just trust me, all right? So he got the Superphonic. I just tuned it down a little bit, and I'm like, all right, just used it, and oh yeah, it sounds great. And the artist in the booth was like, oh yeah, that's the sound right here. Of course, that works. And me, for the synth, I use the Juno 60 on everything that I do, for the simple reason that I don't have to think about. It's a very simple synth in a way, but I still find new ways of using it. And I use it because when I started producing techno and electro, it was so many synths to choose from, right? And I was like, man, like I would read up and try chords and try this and that, and it was like 3 months and I still didn't do no song. I was like, man, because I was used to just get a Fender bass or get a Stratocaster and go to the music, right? When I came up as a pianist, and any pianist can use, unless you're a megastar, you're gonna play the piano. Right? If it's in tune, if it's a decent one, you can just do a session on it, and I'll play a concert. And a friend of mine told me, Chris Brand from Wamdu Kids, it's a house producer from Atlanta. He told me, if you don't know, just use a 60, because that's the only synth that you can use for everything, top to bottom, and it's not gonna clash. It's one of these magic synths. So I just took that advice and ran with it. At first, I was like, man, 60s, like everybody's using the 60s on every record and everything. But then it's just like saying a TR 808 is used in rap music. But what does that mean? I mean, it's used in you have an 808 in the New Orleans sound from Lil Wayne. You have an 808 in Too Short sound. You have the crazy modern like cloud trap thing with an 808. It's still 808, but you could never say that the Manny Fresh stuff from '94 sounds like the current stuff from that is all dreamy and everything. So
But
Yeah.
can I comment on that? This microphone is not really. Um, what I get from this is that don't spend all your money on a lot of different equipment. Go for a few things. Get to know your stuff, and focus on the music and the sound you have. And also, we're actually here at Knowledge Arena also doing something called the Knowledge Pro. Some young kids come and we give them advice on stuff. And this is exactly what I have been telling these young people during the last couple of days. Just don't use all your money on gear. Focus on a few things.
there's two examples for me. Like when you said that, I was eager to tell them, like, just get one piece of gear and know it inside out. That's the best advice you can have. Because he's probably going to kill me for that, but some of his music, I'm not going to tell what it is, has just one drum machine, and I know you know what I'm talking about. Like, and it's a drum that you can pitch from, and it's a blue one, all right, with the lines. Anyways, and he uses it in such a clever way. I think you got that from Prince, actually, the way he used the Lindrum. Like, one instrument can be so many things if you just know it inside out. And a great example would be the TB303 that did Acid House. It's ask anybody from that generation about the TB303. It was, to them, it was a piece of shit. It was just it was a bad bass synth that sounded like crap. And all of a sudden, some dudes tweaked it out, and they just had this one piece of crap to do music with, and some way they found some crazy stuff. The way I got influenced by that is Marcus Miller. He played the same bass, his famous jazz bass, and he says in an interview, like, he got asked, why you got to keep the same bass for 35 years? And he said, I just choose the right instrument, and that's my voice, and I go straight to the music. Because the less instrument you have, the more you can focus on the music.
That's a very good point.
Just like the Brian Eno thing, if you listen to Brian Eno, all of his ambient albums, it's all DX7. Like 90% of it is just like, people think a DX7 is going to be this and that. That's something really important, is not to believe the hype about what a specific gear is supposed to do. For example, if people go on the internet and they read about the Alpha Juno one, they're going to read on so many forums that the Alpha Juno one is the rave synth, the one that does the Hoover, all that stuff. But I know for a fact that you use that stuff on some productions, and nobody would tell. It's like people would be surprised. Juno one can be used to do pop or to do ambient, to do anything you want. You just have to know it.
Can we listen to some music again? Something, where there's a particular instrument in a way playing an important role.
How about I got I'll Be Good and maybe the Minimoog bass by Randy Ninja. Oh yes. So a great example, we're gonna maybe I have something a little better. What you want, drum machine or synth? Who says drum machine? Who says synth? Yes, it's gonna be drum machine. And we was talking about Prince and the way they was doing this stuff. So I'm gonna play a Jam and Lois tune by Climax. It was the Climax Wild Girls one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And this is basically Jam and Lewis. There was Prince's bass player and keyboardist, and Prince was very well known to use the Lin LM1. That was his thing. And when they started producing, Jimmy Jam was like, we can't use the same exact one because we're gonna be like too much a ripoff. So they used just the newer one, which was the LM2. And this is the sound of that. And that was I think it was on one of the first records when they really came into their own with the bigger drums than anything.
Yeah, that was a great album from them. It was before they blew up, and that was one of the first productions that Jamie Lewis did after being kicked out of the Time by Prince for being late for a concert. So they were stuck in snow. I'm sure some of you already know the story, but yeah, that's another lesson for people. If you're fired from somewhere, kicked off of some places, you can make your life even better after that. It's almost a blessing in disguise. So don't give up if somebody's fired you or
Exactly.
kicked you off of something.
And it's funny because we was talking about being recognized for your sound, and if you continue on the story, this is a great, synchronicity. Oh yeah, after just right after what you're saying is, John Lewis got fired by Prince, but then fast forward, Prince told them that they would never have to produce for anybody else. That was the thing, because like the real reason was that because the whole thing that they got fired for being late, it was like the real reason is that when they got back into the band, they was late because they was producing for SOS Band. You remember that? And the thing is, Prince, like they didn't think it was gonna be a hit, but it was a big hit over the weeks, and Prince heard it, and it was that what came to be known as the Minneapolis sound. And you remember when you said you felt raped because somebody took kind of your sound when you was in the studio. Prince, I think he felt exactly the same way because it was his thing. And the funny story is like Jimmy Jam, they tried to hide the Billboard magazines back then because it was a hit, and it was scared that Prince would look at it and know.
Oh, okay. Wow.
But then one day he came to them and said, "I've been known you did that tune a year ago, so you're fired." you know?
Yeah, it's a trip. I mean, I don't think it was. It's human to feel when you start a particular thing and then you start seeing people like emulate and do things, especially without a thank you. So it's one of the things that it happens it happens all the time. It's like
Imitation is the simplest form of flattery.
yeah,
Right?
that's true though. Yeah, exactly. So you have to be strong in your head, and I'm sure a lot of the Detroit guys, a lot of the guys who started techno, they probably sit back and like, man, what the fuck happened? I mean, it's like Juan Atkins, all these guys, they started this stuff, and all of a sudden you see Mr. Joe Blow doing the same stuff.
Exactly.
20 years later, and it's like the stadium is packed, and and here they are from Detroit, like just like damn. I mean, I'm underground resistance, for example. It's like, I mean, I can imagine how they feel, but that's a debate for another time. But
Right, right.
but again, flattery is the best. Imitation is the best flattery. It's just how the way you handle it as a human being. You know what I mean? So yeah,
Exactly,
you're talking
yeah.
about questions over there.
Yes,
Anybody got
exactly.
questions?
What would you say to people that say that natural talent exists and it's all about practice? That natural talent doesn't exist, yeah.
I totally think, I think you can agree with me on this one. I live by the whole success is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. You got the natural thing, but then I don't think it's one or the other. You have to have that thing in you, but then you have to work it to the bone. I don't believe anybody be like a genius naturally. And all the things you see, like the kid prodigies and everything, these kids just do that thing from like 20 hours a day. Like you have all these crazy kid pianists, like the classical kids, and people think, oh, they're 8 years old, they're playing Chopin or whatever. It's amazing. Yeah, but the kid does just that. Like he has nothing to think about. He's a kid. He gets up, plays the piano, goes to sleep. Plays the piano, goes to sleep. If you're 20 years old, and I know people that have been doing exactly that. I know of a dude that was 20 years old and he had never touched a piano in his life, and now he's in New York and playing with all the bebop bands because at one point he was an electrical engineer or something, and he was like, no, I want to do music, and he didn't know anything about music. He just locked himself up in a room for 3 years, and he knew that was the secret. He knew he wanted to do that for real, but then he just worked, and everybody was like, oh, it's too late. You know what people say? It's too late. You started too late. If only I was 20 years younger and everything. I don't know what you think about it, but to me, it's there's not like the God-given talent that does everything, and then, you know,
Yeah, I think that goes both ways. I just think that you can learn and practice and hold yourself into a room and knowing nothing about music except just looking in magazines and wanting to be into it. Or, I think it does come from a spiritual place, to be honest. You know what I mean? I think it's both ways. I mean, I feel
exactly.
that I got it from a spiritual sense. I don't practice anything. I'm just being honest with you. I don't practice my sets. I don't practice anything. I don't hold myself up in the room. I don't play notes for 15 hours. I just do it. You know
Yeah,
what I'm
but you
saying?
did, you did learn out of the records a lot. I mean,
Say what?
I mean, you spent hours listening to music.
Oh
and
yeah, I spent hours
so
listening
it's
to
some
music,
type of
but
work.
Yeah, it is.
There's
I'm
always
just
some
being
type of
honest
work
with
somewhere.
You. I'm just being honest with you. I'm only being honest.
Yeah,
I
but
just
what I'm
don't-
saying is that
yeah.
work is not necessarily. I'm talking about a pianist that wanted to play bebop.
Yeah, that's
So
dope.
that's one type. Your
That's
thing
what I'm saying,
is
it's two
your thing
different things.
is like
Yeah.
producing funk, and for that, your work was not playing scales 10
Right,
hours a day.
right.
It was listening to funk 10 hours a day and and knowing who did what and getting to know the history of the music and who did what style. But it was natural to you, but it still was. You still put the hours doing it.
Yeah, there was hours of collecting records and listening, but when I touched a keyboard, like in '88 or '87, I just started doing stuff. I didn't think about it. See, this is what I'm only trying to explain, that there's different, to answer your question, I think it's both ways. You can practice hard, practice hard. You could be a fantastic success in anything you're doing. But then there's also a Zen level where, and I hope you stick with me, that there's just something just spiritual about it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, some people, I've seen people go to a keyboard and just start doing some things that actually sounds good the first time. You know what I'm saying? Like, they don't even know music. They don't know notes. They don't know how to read. They don't know any of that stuff. They didn't go to college for it, anything. And it sounds dope because music is not to be judged by whether it's like the best writer or reader. You know what I'm saying? That's just my opinion. I mean,
I agree with you.
you feel me? It's like
What I'm saying is that it's always some work going on, and that's the whole thing. Because music theory is just like saying, like, you ever met a street poet, for example, or a rapper that never really read books or something, and they come up with these amazing rhymes, and to them they never worked really. Like, it's not like they studied and went to university like somebody would be like a film music score arranger would. You know what I'm saying? And to them, and rap is a great example to me, because to them they don't work. But you like, dude, you're constantly listening to rap and trying to rap along those lines and thinking about it, and you're involved with it. And I think that could be a good term.
Yes.
Like, the mix of being inspired, like, it comes. I do think music is not yours. The music is always coming from a higher place. I always think we're just the terminals of it, and so
we're all
everybody
connected.
just let it shine through a different way.
Gary, should we ask one more?
Hey guys.
you
Yeah, cool. So for people who want to get into like the boogie sound from the 70s and 80s, is there like 2 or 3 labels which you would maybe recommend sort of getting stuck into and
I'll
finding
let
your way
them
there?
handle this one, because
Oh
that's your
yeah,
shit.
I would suggest Prelude Records, South Soul, and West End Records, and there's
Atlantic, maybe
say what?
Atlantic.
I'm sorry.
Atlantic.
Which one?
Atlantic.
Oh, Atlantic Records. Yeah, Atlantic. They're a major label. Yeah, I was sticking more
Oh, yeah, to
on
the
the
underground
underground
thing.
stuff.
Yeah,
but
right.
but of course, a lot of great major labels have had great boogie and funk related artists. So to answer your question, those 3 labels right there, Prelude, West End, and South Soul are the gateway to like that particular sound, because a lot of the major labels were kind of like manufacturing it a little bit more commercially. But when you got underground, those 3 labels that I just mentioned were some of the gateways.
Prelude is basically the Motown of boogie. We could basically say that in the importance of it, not in the way it worked. But you could get just like you would get on Dance Mania in Chicago if you want to learn about house from the 90s that was played in Chicago. Prelude is really that New York boogie sound.
West-
Because salsa is sometimes a little bit more disco though, to me, but it's still, but Prelude is like, especially the whole 80, 82 period. You know what I'm saying?
Give it up for Damn Funk.
Much love, everybody. I'm Dame Funk. Thanks for your support.
And Gary Gritness.